Welcome to another episode of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker on this February 9th, 2022. We have an extra special guest today. Our guest is Melissa Sercia, who is an author who's done like 3 different paranormal romance urban fantasy series. And we'll talk about that in more detail. Our client for today, which we'll do in about the second half of the show, our client is Joe Rogan a racist or just a big, stupid dummy?
Behold, trapped in a hellscape of their own invention, socially unaware old white men bound by the pretense of being fake lawyers yet knowing no law, no exquisite Latin terminology, they are inexplicably compelled to quibble over minutia, squabble over triflings, and bicker like those who value their backyards far too highly without even knowing the difference between an easement and an alleyway. At this very moment, you have entered the heart of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Let's get started.
Are you unappreciated? Are your ideas not noticed? Are you usually the last one picked for pretty much anything? It can be very depressing not getting the attention you deserve. You were the first to think of bread to surround a hot dog, but no one listened, especially when the evil bun makers ripped you off. You were the first to think of wooden sticks that come back when you throw them, but those damn Australians stole your idea. You even thought of toilets before anyone else. In these moments, you need something that makes people finally see you as the true genius you are. Something undeniable, something remarkable, something like mental strobe lights. With our patented insertable DNA-driven microchip technology, anytime you have the genesis of a brilliant invention, mental strobe lights will appear 3 feet above your head and flash alternating blue, green, and purple lights to let everyone know a true savant is present. Everyone will turn to you and say, "We can't wait for your latest idea, Jimmy," and give you the adulation you always knew belonged to you. Comic strip artists may say they came up with this idea first with their baby light bulbs that pop up behind your head. But mental strobe lights are the very first surgical solution to make this a reality. Our microchips are inserted in every vertebra of your spine and each lobe of the brain with our perfectly safe, untested procedure. Mental strobe lights let the people of the world know you're better than them, always. Okay. There's
Did Waspy Soda Pop?
Intense.
This is the sponsor.
That's our fake sponsor for today.
That was surreal. That was very odd.
So sad it's fake.
I
like
guess we
that,
all
that
like that, wouldn't we?
Have like little lights flashing above our heads.
I just
I
want a
I want
halo,
that.
so everyone knows I'm great. Can I just have a halo?
Yeah, you can have that. You could wear that today if you want. All right. Well, let's meet our author today. This is Melissa Sercia. She's got 3 different series of books out: The Beautiful Dark Beast, the Immortal Billionaire series, and I can't remember what the third one is.
Blood and Darkness. Yeah.
Blood and Darkness, which is usually what happens when
Ugh,
they take.
that sounds intense.
It's very, very intense. Yeah.
So are you on a book tour right now? Is like a book that you just recently got published, or
yeah, I mean, I'm always on a book tour. That's like my
okay.
whole life is a book tour. Yeah, I just finished writing the 5th book for the Immortal Billionaire series. It should be out in March, if everything goes well with, editing and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. I've been published since 2018.
Can you tell us about that series, the Immortal Billionaire, for our listeners who don't know, and me too.
Yeah. It's really super steamy paranormal romance. So
you've got like 15 books published, but you've only been published since 2018.
And I have 9 published. 9 published.
Whoa.
Since 2018. Yeah,
So
I write a lot.
But can we go back? I want to know, what's the shtick of the Immortal Billionaire? What's the
shtick?
The pitch?
Dick. Okay, yeah. So it's essentially each book is about a different couple, right? But there's this underlying plot arc that weaves them all together. So, technically you could read the books out of order, but I would recommend reading them, starting at 1. So it's basically about immortal creatures. Usually the men are the immortal ones and the women that fall in love with them. And it's very dark romance, enemies to lovers, a lot of angst, a lot of tension. But it's set in, modern times. So it's like New York City. You've got a hot vampire who owns the restaurant. He's a billionaire, and the small town human girl moves to the city to become a chef and gets a job working for him and gets pulled into his dark, underbelly world. And then you meet like these secondary characters, and each book sort of goes into their stories as they become the main couple, in each following story. And really the plot is, I mean, it's romance, you know, you want a happy ever after at the end, and you get that. But it's about this book, this secret text called the Codex, which is supposed to have these secrets to the underworld and secrets to immortality. And they're all after it. They're all fighting over it. And yeah, you just have to read it and see, like, you know, what happens.
So why is it that the vampires are mainly men? Why aren't there more women vampires in this world that you've created?
Well, there are women vampires as well, but the main plot I wanted was to have this immortal, sort of powerful male, a hero, right? Hero slash villain, really. It depends on your perspective.
Because that's never been actually in books before. They've never had men as the heroes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, but I wanted them to be billionaires, and I wanted them to be immortal. And then I wanted the women to be human, at least to start with. You know, some may change and you know, turn into something else as the books progress. But you know, it's a genre that's popular. People like to read it. I love to read it. I love to write it. It's fun. It's just good, campy, dark, fun, lots of sex, lots of steaminess. You know,
so the vampires are all like sexual creatures or something. So okay.
I mean, yeah, they're all good looking. They're all,
vampires,
you know,
are always sexy.
Tons of money. I mean, come on. Have you read any Anne Rice? I mean, her vampires were so romanticized, you know. So yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I write super hot, supernatural creatures.
So in other words, so these immortal billionaires, none of them look like Donald Trump, is what you're saying.
God, no, please. No. Nobody wants to read about that.
Do they look like Elon Musk?
No. Actually, I did a funny thing on my Facebook. It was a meme that somebody had posted about, like, why don't billionaires, you know, look like in books? And it was like a picture of Elon Musk and I think Zuckerberg, and all of us authors had a good laugh over it.
You know, Zuckerberg does and Musk both do look like vampires, actually. As a matter of fact, I think the king of the three who looks like a vampire is Jeff Bezos.
I think they look more like robots, really.
They're robot vampires.
Well, he looks like,
which would be a whole different, you know, that's a new genre, Greg. Robot vampires should be its own new genre. You know, and what they do is they go around biting cars and things and sucking the oil out of them.
Yeah.
There is a sexy robot android thing in like science fiction where like the Vision. I don't know if you're a fan of superhero like Marvel movies,
I do.
But like people thought the Vision was hot, just like Spock. There's something about that emotionless guy who's so hard to connect with, and if you can, that's extra sexy.
That's what you say about me, Greg.
Well, I think part of Vision's appeal, though, is Paul Bettany, you know, because he just brought that character to life so well. And I think that's part of the appeal of Vision, to be honest.
But Greg is a major comic book nerd.
Okay.
And so he goes before Paul Bettany was ever involved. So I think Greg has had a crush on Vision for a long time.
But you remember, like in Star Trek, so many girls I know grew up thinking Spock was hot. There's something about that emotionless, like, oh God, it's so hard to reach me, but if you do, it's like an extra victory. So it's like, ooh, a challenge. But I was curious though, because I worked in a bookstore. I remember a big section was paranormal romance. Are you a different niche? Is this like this? Is there actually a little sub niche that you're called this kind of fiction?
Well, I mean, there's so many subgenres now in the indie, you know, book market. So paranormal romance can be like the blanket, you know, I guess genre. And then my like tropes that I touch on are like billionaire romance and vampire romance. And
that's a thing.
Billionaire romance is a thing. Yeah, it's a pretty big thing. So, you know, that's kind of like my subgenre that I went to with this particular series. I'm not gonna.
So you didn't invent billionaire romance?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but you made it paranormal. Was there a billionaire romance that just had no paranormal? That's just like, oh, I fell in love with a billionaire, but you added the vampire part. So
kind of, I mean, at the time, I hadn't found anything that I had seen that was considered billionaire romance that was paranormal. I'm sure it was out there. I just wasn't to my knowledge at the time. And so I thought, you know, I've been writing paranormal in urban fantasy before. So I thought, well, let me make this billionaire as well and really play on those, you know, the billionaire tropes.
I kind of want to get into the concept of urban fantasy before, because that was a new term that I wasn't familiar with when I was looking at your website.
Oh, right.
So urban fantasy, is that like take place throughout cities, or is it just like certain neighborhoods?
No, it means when rappers get magical powers.
Yes. No, urban fantasy just basically means that it's taking place in the modern world. So like essentially like Game of Thrones, for example, is an epic fantasy. It's a high fantasy because he created this fictitious world that doesn't exist. Whereas, you have books like Twilight or the Vampire Diaries or, 100 other ones. Even Anne Rice's books were kind of urban fantasy, gothic urban fantasy.
But wouldn't Twilight be more like suburban fantasy?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't refer to, neighborhoods. It just means essentially that you are setting it in a real city. Like, you have a normal job, you're a human, and all of a sudden you realize, the guy next door is a vampire or whatever. That's considered, it would be considered urban fantasy. So it has to, you can kind of go to fictitious worlds. Like in my series, I do have a couple like fake places that they go to. But all in all, it is set in, totally modern times.
And then there's a whole opening for rural fantasy too, though. You could go out into farmland.
Stephen King, like, I was going to say, like, me and Matt are old enough that, like, when we grew up, a lot of horror movies had that cheesy, like, oh, it's an old castle. Where it's like, who can relate to that? There's no castle. You don't live in Europe. And then I think that's what revolutionized horror in the 70s with Stephen King, where he was just like, no, these scary things can happen in your suburban block or
exactly.
And some of them were rural. They were
like Children of the Corn, I suppose.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Set in modern. Yeah.
But I think that was
it would be more like rural horror as opposed to rural fantasy. So I think like if you're actually out in the cornfield with like, let's say, armor and a sword, that would be rural fantasy. Or if you find a hobbit out in your well.
Yeah. I mean, you could even relate it to, like in comic books, for example, like, with Batman, it's Gotham City, right? So it's a fictitious city, but, a lot of times, like with Superman, he lived in a real place, a real state and grew up on a real farm and had all these powers. So I think that would be kind of an example of like an urban type of a fantasy. I mean, it's superhero comic, but you know what I mean? Like just, that's kind of the difference.
Oh yeah, but Superman would have been rural because he was on a farm.
That's true.
He started rural.
I just noticed you have a ghost in your background that just
no, that is my my partner.
Is that your paranormal partner?
Yes, he's a vampire.
That's her immortal billionaire.
Secrets out. Yeah.
So you found a billionaire immortal. That's great. I'm happy.
Right. Wish not on the billionaire part. But.
So I'm curious about your other series. Could you give us the shticks? So you got the billionaire.
Yeah. So the first series I wrote was Blood and Darkness, and that was one I published in 2018. It's essentially about a 400-year-old vampire who is hellbent on revenge against the ones who turned her. She has to go up against them, but in order to do that, she needs to be more powerful because they are, the all-powerful. So she realizes she has to link with a witch with blood magic in order to gain these extra powers to fight this war against them. And it's a pretty big cast of characters. It's pretty epic. And she travels around from, London to New Orleans to.
So where does the romance come in? Where's the sex?
That's not really romance. That was my urban fantasy. So that's also the difference between urban fantasy is romance can be a subplot sort of in the background, but the main plot point is usually just like the quest or
good versus evil
motivation. Yeah, exactly. So and then I did a spin-off series off of that called Beautiful Dark Beasts, and the events of that book take place 10 years after the end of Blood and Darkness, and it's a new main character, but set in the same world, same magic rules apply and everything, but just
I want my girlfriend to call me that so bad now. Beautiful Dark Beast. I want that to be your pet name for me. Oh, hello, my beautiful dark beast.
Yes, I support that.
That would be hot.
I think the only one that actually applies there, Greg, is Beast.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might get her just
I'm a little dark. I'm not blonde, so brunette beast.
Humor can be a little dark.
Or gray. I guess I'm a gray beast.
So are your books in bookstores across the country, or are you mainly self-published, or where can people find your books?
Yeah, well, they're all online at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, all of the stores. There are some bookstores that carry my books, mostly independent bookstores, like the smaller local ones. And so the first two series, I did have a publisher for those. And then this last one, Immortal Billionaires, I have gone indie and have self-published those as well. But yeah, there's some, I was Googling it once. I think there's like a bookstore in Australia or something random that carries my books. So that was pretty exciting.
So you've been writing like since you were a little girl? Were you always into writing? Or
Yeah, I mean, not like book writing. I mean, mostly like I wrote a lot of poetry, short stories, song lyrics. And it wasn't until I was 35 and I was working in a really high powered corporate job that was very soul sucking. And I started rethinking kind of like, what I wanted for my life. And the writing started calling to me again. And I got this idea for Blood and Darkness. And it took me like about 4 years to really flesh it out and figure out what the hell I was doing, because I didn't really know how to write a book at that point. And and then I started taking classes, reading craft books, getting all into it, joined some writing communities on like social media. And, in a nutshell, wrote Blood and Magic, which was my first debut novel, and submitted it a bunch of times. Of course, you get a lot of rejections at first, and eventually found a home for it. And then my goal was, to be published by the time I was 40, and that was achieved. So I was very excited about that.
Well, since you've got 9 books done
9 books.
Since 2018, it's just like 9 books in the last 5 years. That's pretty phenomenal. I mean, like, you're just like a writing beast. Not necessarily a beautiful dark one, but
right. Yeah. No.
A beautiful blonde beast.
I'm kind of a hell beast sometimes. Yeah.
So I mean, because that's pretty impressive that like you didn't really write much, but you wrote poetry, but a novel, like anyone who writes a novel, even if it's terrible, I'm impressed. Just that massive amount of work.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the worst novel ever written. I knew this weird guy I worked with. He's like, yeah, I found out he wrote a science fiction novel. I'm sure it was terrible, but I still was impressed. I was like, wow, you actually wrote 300 pages.
Yeah, it's a challenge. But once I did it, I was addicted to it. And I just became so like, I have more ideas than I know what to do with. I've, ideas like lists and lists and lists of things. I'm like, I need more time, more hours in the day to like really get them all down. So, and I tell myself, oh, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to relax now. The minute I finish a book, maybe a couple days, and I'm like, oh, the new idea is coming to me. I have to start plotting it.
So the current series, The Immortal Billionaires, are you ending at 5 books, or are you going to like take that into a longer?
It's kind of like open-ended, because like each book has its own finality. So I could end it there, or I could continue. I'm going to take a break from that series though, because I personally get burnt out, writing about the same thing over and over again. So I want to take a break from it, but I left it to where I can always add more backstories, more side characters, and there's a lot to explore in that series, but I'm excited to do something fresh and new right now.
You could do the Immortal Poverty-Stricken series after that.
You can use me as a model. Interview
Poster
me and be
boy.
like, yeah, it'll be based on Greg.
Put you on the cover, yeah.
Do you delve into how these vampires actually got their $1 billion, or they just made some really good investments early on, like
it's obvious. Ago? They've been alive for hundreds of years. They're smart as fuck. And
but in all the other books, Greg, they're not necessarily billionaires. Sometimes they're just like.
Right. I mean, they should. If I've been alive for 1,000 years and I haven't figured out my finances, there's a problem there. But and I think they steal, they kill, they acquire. They're not nice people. I think that I don't make any sort of like assumptions that they're kind. I mean, just because they fall in love with someone and they're nice to them, they're still like brutal killers. They're like animals, they can do whatever they want. So I think a lot of their wealth is probably just stolen and just taken, like, I want that, it's mine.
Because I was wondering if Greg had actually become a vampire. I'm like, do you think you could have actually amassed $1 billion, Greg, if you were a vampire?
Well, if it's true that don't vampires have they can cloud your mind and just hypnotise you. I could just go up to a millionaire and be like, give me $1 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at my eyes. And he'd be like, sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like you have your plan already in place, Greg.
Well, if vampires were real, sure, yeah, I would have done that. But.
So you would have been one of the smart vampires, is what you're saying, not one of the dumb ones.
I'd obviously be a werewolf, a dumb werewolf, just going.
Yeah, I have werewolves in my books as well.
Yeah. Are they billionaires though? I bet they're not billionaires. Dishwashers?
No, they are. My billionaire werewolf, Cassius, he's in book 3. He is a coffee exporter. He spent some time in in Colombia and learned the ways and probably Jedi mind tricked everybody to give him, their secrets. And now he has his cock.
So wait, are werewolves eternal? I never thought
that was my same question, Greg. I was wondering, are they immortal as well, werewolves? Because you have to kill them with a silver bullet, so you gotta wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I think all supernatural creatures have a weakness and can be killed. I think
but immortality. They would live forever.
Yeah, well, immortality is just like they just don't get diseases, they don't grow old, but they still can be killed.
Okay.
In certain ways. But it's different. Like I've seen authors do werewolves where they're not immortal and they actually do grow old at some point. For my books, they're immortal. And with the Blood and Darkness series that I did, all of my supernatural creatures actually come from Greek gods. I don't do any of the bat, I think they were, Dracula was came from the bat or whatever, but mine come from Apollo and Diana, and the werewolves come from Leto. And I play a lot. I'm really into Greek mythology, so I play a lot on that.
Wait, who's Leto? I'm not familiar with that one.
Leto was a Greek goddess who was said to have ruled the wolves. They called her the werewolf queen or the goddess of werewolves. So
interesting. So the werewolves go back to Greek mythology. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of werewolf lore.
Did you figure out a way to make Hephaestus sexy? The limp?
No, I did not use Hephaestus. No, and like I said, in the first series, there wasn't a lot of sexiness happening. It was more blood and battles.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's there was demons, and they went to the underworld and they had to battle Cerberus, and it's just a very dark series with lots of blood and limbs getting ripped apart.
Can I ask you a question?
No, Greg, don't ask her if you can ask her a question. Just ask the question. You're holding an interview. Of course you can ask a question.
I'm going off on a tangent, so
for crying out loud.
I want to proceed it by that.
Yeah, well, proceed it with I'm going on a tangent, and here's another question.
Okay, so I always thought it's funny, and I was dating this girl, and one day we were just why the fuck does Zeus always have to turn into some weird thing and to basically rape a human woman?
Right.
It's so weird that he always does that. It's I'm gonna turn into a swan. Fuck that dryad. Right. It's you're Zeus. Why are you doing all this shenanigans? It's it was so weird how Zeus would always do that.
It's probably the concept of the billionaire vampires being able to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
He would be more powerful than the billionaire vampires, so he obviously can do whatever he wants to.
Why would you turn into a swan to fuck a dryad?
I think he's just masochistic. I think there's just
a hot dryad, dude.
I think it's because if you've been living for so many millennia, you get bored, and so you need to do something unusual to make things more interesting.
I'm fucking the swan. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably some kind of weird fetish or something.
You probably don't even hear about Zeus turning into a one-celled animal and going after paramecium either.
He would have though. No, he would have gone after a human. That's the stupid thing is Zeus. He would have turned into a one-cell being to have sex with a human woman. Yeah. That's what he would do.
Zeus
if I'm a Greek god tomorrow, I'm turning into a nutria to fuck Beyonce.
Oh my goodness.
Because she obviously loves nutria. She would love that.
Wow, this took a turn.
Welcome to our show.
We take a lot of turns here.
I've noticed. I'm glad I brought a cocktail.
Not necessarily good. Well, that is part of your synopsis of your life. Your bio on your website is that you can find you in your kitchen cooking with a glass of wine in your hand.
Yeah.
So does that mean you only cook things that you can cook with one hand? Is that?
Yeah. It makes you fuck the nutria.
Exactly. Yeah.
Greg, you get that joke once, no more.
No, it was you gave me a good callback for it.
Right.
But I thought that's what you did.
She cooks nutria in her kitchen.
I'm Italian, so I cook a lot of stuff, a lot of Italian food, and I love to cook. Ever since I was young, I've loved to cook. But I like my wine too. So
do you pour the wine into every recipe, or you just a
lot of recipes? Yeah, not all of them. Mostly the bolognese sauce. You definitely got to have a healthy dose of red wine in there, but. I like my wine. I grew up in the hospitality industry. Before I was writing, I was, in that, the wine business, the food business. Both my parents have been in the restaurant business since I was, before I was born. So it's kind of in our blood, to know food and wine. It's a big part of our lives.
Especially if you're Sicilian. I'm sure that there's a lot of family gatherings where everybody gets together and makes the gravy.
Do you ever cook
Exactly.
arancini?
Exactly. My dad does. Yeah. I have not done it yet, but my dad does arancini.
It's
My nonna
work.
used to do it.
Aren't
Yeah.
those like
It's a lot of work.
rice balls or something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
It's like
good.
risotto, kind of like with, deep fried. You can add peas to it. And yeah, it's very good. But it's a lot of work. It's like an all day thing if you're going to make them.
Yeah.
And then you eat them in like a minute and they're all
Yeah,
gone.
exactly. They're gone. Yeah.
They're so good.
Exactly.
I
They're
finally got
very
to go to
good.
Sicily and I couldn't believe it that they were everywhere. Like they were as common as hamburgers, like every restaurant. Oh,
Yeah.
this is arancini. And
Yeah, you
for
don't
me,
find them here that often.
no,
Unless you go to
and
someone's
they're
house.
terrible. They're terrible if you do. Have you
Yeah.
ever found any in America? They're horrible.
Yeah.
They're
no,
not like
exactly.
your dad's.
No, not at all. Not at
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
Sorry, another tangent. I just love Sicilian food.
Yeah, I love food. Yeah, in general. I can talk about food all day.
Now, does your experience in food, does that color your books as well as they're involved with the storylines at all?
Yeah, definitely. Like after I saw the first book of Immortal Billionaires, I really wanted the vampire to be a restaurant owner and to have a winery. And I wanted the main human character, the female, to wanting to be an aspiring chef. And then, she moves to New York City. And of course, you can't just get a chef job right away. She starts out as a server. And so I use my, serving background for like the technical things when I'm describing a scene in a restaurant where she's waiting on people. That's all comes from, firsthand experience that I've, dealt with. So yeah, that was important to me to, describe the food, make the food part of it and be like a character in itself. And then I'm also a big fan of bourbon and whiskey. So a lot of my brooding supernatural creatures are all like pretty much like whiskey alcoholics.
Well, now I need to get into
Be
like
the
a
next
whole
character
different.
in your book.
What's
I need
that?
to get-
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Except
Greg
for-
is totally hammered right now, just so you know.
Oh,
I'm usually
great.
the sober one, and Greg is usually like 10 sheets of the wind by the time we start the show.
Love
But
it.
I do want to get into like a concept that I was just trying to get my head around. So why would vampires eat food if they're immortal? They don't need to eat or drink anything except blood, and I'm assuming they get their sustenance from the blood. And
Yeah.
then, if they are eating, that then presumes, in my opinion, that vampires poop. And so then it becomes, how does that work out as a vampire? And what kind of,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
not to
don't-
get
I
little
mean,
too
yeah,
dark
I
about
think-
it.
Like us.
I
Why
think that's
would it be
like
different?
not like for like romance readers don't really want to know about that
Yeah.
aspect. So
I think they should know about it. You
I-
probably got scat readers amongst your romance readers, and I bet they do want to know about those
No,
things.
she's not
I
writing
mean, I don't
porn. She's
know.
writing romance. She's
Yeah.
not writing weird porno books.
yeah, it's
Maybe-
not like super glamorous or
Well,
whatever.
she
but
said
I
they
mean,
get very steamy, Greg. So you wonder like
They
where the
do.
steam comes from, which could from a major load
Right.
that could be dropped in the cold, and you could get a lot of steam from that. But that's a different
that's a
aspect.
different kind of steam.
No, I
yeah,
do
not
remember-
quite what I was getting at. Yeah.
I do remember picking up my mom's romance books and other.
Okay.
I worked at a bookstore. And they were like pornographic. Some of those. It's like just a nice thing that old middle-aged ladies would buy, and I was like, oh, let me look at these, and I'm like, fuck, that's like letters to Penthouse. I mean, this is pretty explicit sometimes. These romance books that are just kind of mainstream,
This is stuff that your mother just left lying around the house for you to read.
She wasn't much into like the Harlequin romances, those kind. She like the historical romances, but they would have like scenes that were like, whoa, I shouldn't be reading this as a little kid. But the real romances, the best-selling ones, they get really graphic. They're like,
You if you thought they were graphic back then when you were a kid, you should take a look at some of them now.
I
would
can
you say
imagine.
yours are pretty graphic, like erotic?
I actually think mine are kind of, I mean, I thought they were when I wrote them, but I've read some stuff where I'm like, holy crap. I think mine are probably considered a little tame. There's this, there's a rating system that a lot of romance reviewers use, and it's like the red chili pepper emoji. And so if it's like 5 chili peppers, it means it's like super, like the spiciest, steamiest
porn.
books. Almost. I mean, we don't use that word in our industry, but
Sorry.
but yeah, no, but I've had a couple books get reviewed that I thought were like, whoa, this is a lot. And they only like gave it like 3 chili peppers. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So there's definitely spicier stuff out there. I guess it just depends on what your threshold is.
I remember they use euphemisms a lot, like he pressed against her womanhood, or some weird word for her
that's really old.
preferred vagina, basically. But it was
Style.
like
Yeah.
a weird word.
Yeah. We don't use womanhood. No.
Unless you're talking about the hood on a woman.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's
There's
not
a whole
That's an
attractive.
different
important part of
adjective
that.
It's not
before that.
enticing,
Part of
but
the
yeah.
anatomy.
Those are the books that Greg is writing these days about womanhood,
Oh
manhood,
boy, that's
knighthood.
good. That's great.
Who knows whatever else he thinks. All right,
I
well,
think
that
that's my
that does
manhood.
bring us to the midway point of our show. However, before we get into the next segment, which is we're going to have a cooking segment really quick, and then a really quick section called Ask Greg, where we ask Greg a legal question, and he'll give his basically non-trained illegal response to that question.
So
Then
you
we'll
can
move on to
leave
the
now.
well, we're not. No, not
Why?
yet. She can't leave just yet because we
Why
need to at
not?
least I'm going to say why, because we need to find out where people can buy her books. I want to tell people what her website is.
True.
So
But she doesn't have to listen to these special
no,
segments.
that's yes, Greg, that's correct. So anyway, but just so everybody knows, her website is www.melissasercia.com. That's Melissa. So 1L, 2 S's. Sercia is SERCIA.com. And you can find out a lot more about the book she writes. But if there's any other information that you need to give Melissa on like where people can find your literature and where they can buy your books, then go for it right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on Amazon, Melissa Sercia. All my books are on there, Barnes and Noble. And if you go to my website, which he just mentioned, there's links that you can click on directly. And then I'm on all social media sites. I'm really active on Instagram and TikTok, actually. So I know you're streaming live on TikTok right now. Melissa Sercia Writes is my TikTok handle and Instagram. And Facebook, I have an Immortal Billionaires group if you want to join it and learn more about that series. But yeah, I am, you just Google me and a bunch of stuff comes up. So
I know if I joined an Immortal Billionaires group, I would want to learn how to become an Immortal Billionaire. That's
exactly. Well, that's the quest that we're all on together, so join the group and maybe we'll find out.
All right. Is there any other place, any other thing you want to promote right now? Feel free.
Yeah, actually, I'm also one of the hosts of Spoiler Country podcast.
You're in Spoiler Country. We had those guys on a while ago.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
Spoiler Country. They talk about comic books. What do you do?
Yeah. We're a comic book podcast, and I interview comic book creators and read comic books. I know that's shocking because I write romance, but yeah. So we do that. So please check us out on SC.
I'm just so bummed that we didn't spend a half an hour talking about comic books and geeking out.
We could totally do that too.
I didn't know you were that much into comics.
Yeah.
If you go behind the wall behind Greg's head, there's about 10,000 comic books on his wall.
Oh, I love it.
So you just can't see it through his refrigerator.
West of the Mississippi River.
I believe it. Yeah, I don't have that many.
Yeah, he's got a few. All right. Well, we're going to start the next segment of the show. Again, we're going to begin it with our cooking segment, which is for everybody who's interested, is Waspy Soda Pop. So let's get him started.
Food is for eating. Food is for eating. Food is for eating with Waspy Soda Pop.
We have a very special visitor today on this edition of Food is for Eating. You should know that Greg Paddocks, one of the hosts of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker, which so graciously hosts my program, had specifically requested that I do a vegan recipe. So today we have a special visitor who's an expert on food from that region. His name is Voxney Schotelfromp. Take it away, Voxney.
Hello, Earthlings. As Waspy said, I am Voxney Schotelfromp, and I am here from the Vegan star system. Vega is the fifth brightest star in your night sky. I met Waspy many years ago during his intergalactic travels. He said you would like a recipe from my people. I am not sure if it will be edible for humans, but I will do anything for my ugly human friend. This recipe is very popular on my planet Vegaloo, and throughout the Vegan star system. It's called Cleo's Macho. I will make this very easy. Get the head of young clay hooks. Place it in a container that is boiling a mixture of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. Let that sit for 3 Earth hours. Once all the meat from the clay hooks has dissolved into your container, get a cylindrical device in which you can suction liquid. Place it into the container with the clay hooks, soup, and inhale through the device to receive the clay hooks nutrition. That is all.
Well, there you have it. A vegan recipe for anyone you know who might be visiting from the Vegas star system. I can say I've never tried that before. I'd have to do that one day if I can find out how to get clay hooks. Anyway, thank you, Voxy, my good alien friend. See y'all next time on Food is for Eating. Well.
I want Clay Hooks to do the cooking segment from now on.
Well, I think we lost our guest.
Can you blame her?
I think she was like,
I wanted to go away after that.
So
I like Clay Hooks. That was good.
Well, Clay Hooks is the thing that you actually make in the pot, I guess.
I'm sorry,
the container.
What's his name? Foxy
Voxney. It was on the screen. So
I know.
I can't remember what it was.
I was watching the screen, but I lost the thread there.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to stick around. I don't know why we were so intellectual in our questions that we asked. So I do want to thank Melissa Sercia for coming on. You can find her on her website, which is, again, melissasercia.com. Also, you can find her on TikTok, as well as, I'm sure, lots of other places. She's also part of Spoiler Country. And so next, we're going to do our next segment, which everyone loves to...
Wait, before you start, I want to, if you can improvise off the cuff.
Yeah.
I want you to ask me a legal question about a immortal billionaire. Legal question that would come up.
You want me to ask a legal question?
Or ask a question to me, a legal issue regarding immortal billionaires.
I'll see if I can do that. I don't know if
they probably have lots of issues that normally...
I don't know if I'm up to the task, but anyway.
I know, it's pretty
But we do need to move into this next segment. So I think
he's a dumb fat fuck, always drunk. He doesn't really think... And he doesn't thunk.
I don't think that's... I don't know that's what it is. All right, I'm just going to try this again.
He has an opinion, may not always be right. He's a real fake lawyer. He's old and he's white. Ask him a question, 'cause he's a good egg for bogus advice. Ask Greg. Ask Greg. Ask Greg.
All right. Greg.
I have a theme song for myself. I'm still tickled. I never thought in my life somebody would write a theme song about me.
Well, you needed one all these years. You need theme music that you should play every time you walk into a room. But we've got a segment. Let's do the segment. So the segment is Ask Greg. So first question. Dear Greg, in Denver, Colorado, it's against the law to mistreat rats. Why?
Well, first I'd like to ask, is that true?
Well, that's more digging that has to be done. That's the question.
That sounds very specious to me.
But why would that be the case? And please answer the question. This is the question being posed to you.
I can't imagine, but I'm going to go on a limb here. So, I believe maybe this law happened after Runaway Ralph and the Mouse and the Motorcycle became popular, where there was a slight affection for rats in the 50s and 60s when those books came out. We're like, don't kill these rats. They're riding motorcycles. They're cute. I can't imagine, first of all, why there's a law, because rats spread disease. So I'm sorry, I'm a little boondoggled here.
Okay.
This is really a law in Denver?
Yeah. Let's just say that it is. I mean, I haven't looked into it. This is the question that the listener is posing to you. So I'm assuming they looked it up and found this law existed.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of
So they want to know why. And so from your legal background, of which you don't have any, what is your response to that?
Oh, I have a legal background, man. I just don't tell you about it.
Okay, well then answer the question.
I keep it close to the vest. I'm a little cagey.
Why would it be a law to be illegal to mistreat rats? I mean, maybe it's got to do with rats that people have in their home, and it's like animal abuse.
Yeah, you're not allowed to mistreat pets.
Or you force the rats to watch the TV show Friends or something.
I like Friends.
Okay, or something else.
My owners would let me watch Friends.
Or you make the rats watch our podcast. So
I think, okay, this is my theory. I'm sorry.
Please.
I'm really. I imagine it's after Michael Jackson recorded the song "Ben" in 1972, and also the books "Runaway Ralph." There was
and the movie Willard.
Well, Willard was a little different. That made people not like rats. But there was a time when, just like in the 80s, America had a love affair with Australians. So we had a brief love affair with rats. And I think Denver was on the tip there, and they were like, we got to do something about mistreatment of rats. People like rats because Michael Jackson wrote a song about one.
Mystery minute rats?
Mistreat rats.
Oh, mistreat. I thought you said mystery minute rats. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
That's a good band name. The Mystery Minute Rats. But I that's all I can assume, because rats have always been a hated animal throughout history. So I can't imagine what period of time they would have written this law. But maybe it was in the mid-70s when rats had gained a certain affection from the American populace due to Michael Jackson's song "Bad."
Okay, so that's why it could be. All right, good. Well, thank you for that.
Oh, sorry, I really don't know.
So you did want a question regarding legal issues with immortal billionaires. So then I guess the question is, dear Greg, if you're an immortal billionaire, who do you leave your money to? And how do you get through estate laws to make sure that happens?
That's a good question.
All right, well, I did what I could.
So
we're going to spotlight you so everyone can watch you respond.
Well, I imagine you wouldn't never leave your money because you would never die. So you would never leave your money to anyone.
But, there's always the potential that some Van Helsing descendants could come after you.
Well, I imagine you'd have some progeny over the thousands of years you've lived. You would have fucked a lot of people and spawned.
Mm-hmm.
And you leave it to them.
Yeah, but how do you do that?
To a lawyer, a vampire.
Yeah, but
lawyer.
You're the lawyer, though, so you're supposed to say how it's done. You're the fake lawyer.
You call up a vampire lawyer, a monster lawyer.
A monster lawyer.
They take care of mummies, werewolves, and there's monster lawyers who will even if you have probate issues or traffic violations. Yeah, there's monster lawyers out there for any type of monster you are.
Mm-hmm.
Just not zombies.
Got it. All right. So the basic thing is you need to find a monster lawyer who'll take care of your monster needs.
Yeah, and write a will for you and say, hey, this kid I had in 1420.
So you have to find like the Law Offices of Monsters, Vampires, and Werewolves, essentially, is what you're looking for.
Yeah, Monsters Inc. It's called.
Monsters Inc. I think that was a Disney movie. I don't know if that one applies. Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you, Greg, for answering these pressing legal questions. So now we will move on to the heart of our show for our final 15 minutes, where we talk about our client and we see what we can do about dealing with the client. So the client this week is Joe Rogan a racist or just a big old dummy? And this initially started with the controversy that happened when Neil Young had decided to pull his music from Spotify, and that created like a little bit of controversy, got people starting looking towards Joe Rogan in some way. And whether you fall on the political lines on that issue is fine. That's not what we're getting into. But what happened was, after that happened, somebody on Twitter put out a video, a supercut of all of the times that Joe Rogan used the N-word on his show over the course of his last 12 years. And it was at least 5 minutes long of all of the times that he used it. Now, from what I could see, it was not used in a pejorative sense. In other words, he wasn't calling people the N-word. He was using it based on discussions having to do with, say, like Richard Pryor using the N-word, or if it being in movies, like, say, in Quentin Tarantino movies, or in some other context along those lines. However, it still does beg the question of, like, even so, why are you using the word? I mean, I can have those conversations with people too, and I'm older than Joe Rogan is, and as far as I can recall, I've never used that word when discussing that word with other people. I know saying the N-word basically defines it. So there's that. And then at the same time, as part of that particular video where he had all these things using the N-word, it shows a clip of him talking about a time that he went to an area that had a neighborhood that is predominantly black, and he was taken there and to go see the movie Planet of the Apes. And so when he gets there, he says, I'm in the Planet of the Apes. Because it was all black people, right? And so that can immediately infer, and that got a laugh from the two guys that were on the podcast with him. And I apologize. I don't mean to characterize anybody
The
in
two
that way.
Proud Boys.
So I'm using it in that context too, where I could potentially get in trouble for saying that because of the fact that I'm talking about that situation. Anyway, but the thing is that it was his idea and he did make that up and he said it to make them happy. I don't know if they were Proud Boys. Okay, so then there is a third clip that comes out that he's having a discussion with a guy named Jordan Peterson, talking about people's melanin. In other words, like why some people shouldn't be called black because they're not actually the color black, they're brown. And that has offended a lot of people too, because like here's two old white guys who somehow are showing that they have the right to discuss the black experience for people who aren't necessarily the color black, but they're part of the black community. And that was found to be offensive by a lot of people. And then additional clip came after this, where he's talking with a gentleman who is of mixed race. His father was white and his mother was black. And Joe Rogan says this. He says, oh, you've got the best of both worlds. You can have the black body, the black genetics, and you can have the white man's mind, the white man's brain, which at face value is a completely racist thing to say, in my opinion. Now, Greg, I pose to you, do these statements make him a racist or just a big old dummy because of the fact that he said these things?
I think I never listened to Joe Rogan, so this was this client showed
Well, I
up
never
on-
listened to him either, but I watched those things. So
I know, but I'm saying our client showed up on our doorstep like an orphan like 6 hours ago.
ah,
So we didn't have a lot of research time. But I know that
well,
as
no,
a
the
guy
client
growing up
was,
in the
it
70s,
was like 24 hours. But anyway, go ahead.
we said a lot of stupid jokes, but it didn't mean like we hated black people.
Hmm.
It was offensive. I'm sure if a black person was in the room, they'd be like, fuck, you really hurt my feelings by saying that. But it wasn't like the next day we're like, oh yeah, black people shouldn't, I don't want to work with them. I don't want to be around them. I don't like black people. It was just some stupid joke. But there's a line crossed when maybe because they're just not funny, like the mixed race guest who, that's not even funny. That's just like, so it could be he's just a dummy,
Yeah.
but it could be he's a total racist too. I don't know. I don't know Joe Rogan.
Well, I mean, he's given. Well, let's see where this. I'm going to give a little background information as to why the supercut of him using the N-word came out. So there's a relatively famous R&B artist named India.Arie, who's African American, and she had listened to some Joe Rogan episodes over the years, and there were certain things about his personality and his show that she eventually moved away from. And she's an artist who's got her music on Spotify, and has issues with Spotify in terms of how they treat artists and how they pay artists. And essentially, when this supercut was sent to her, she was like, this is kind of the straw for me, the last straw of dealing with Spotify. So she was pulling her music from Spotify for other reasons, and this was the last reason that she decided to use that. So she's the one who really made this issue become more popular for just like the last 4 or 5 days. It started to gather some steam, and a lot of people came out to be apologists for Joe Rogan for some of those things, like the N-word thing, kind of understandable. He got some support actually from comedians in the black community who felt that, within the context, it can work. However, they get to the Planet of the Apes comment and the white brain comment.
Yeah.
They're not in for that, right? So, right, understandably so. So I think, where we can delve into this a bit is like, what responsibility to us as old white guys do we have for not forwarding moronic racial stereotypes? And I think that's where Joe Rogan really falls short. Judging on his apology, and the fact is that India.Arie actually accepted his apology in terms of how remorseful he was and how legitimate it seemed to be, and how much Rogan seemed to be willing to learn more and to become better, because he said he hasn't used the N-word actually in many, many years. So he just apologized. He said even he was kind of offended by the clip of him using the word that many times. He's like, oh, Matt, he's like, oh, Joe, just shut up. Stop saying that. So at least he can see that. Whereas, if like somebody like, I don't know, the guy Gutfeld on Fox News, who likes to use the term the blacks to refer to black people or people of color, I don't see him actually taking the time to learn from his negative behavior and becoming a better person from it. So I can give Joe Rogan a little bit of a leeway on that one. However, I still think that, I mean, and he actually was responsible for going with Spotify and removing about 70 episodes of 70 of his podcasts from Spotify so that they're not going to be,
I'm amazed just in the country we live in right now, that in the past 10 years, that a white person saying the N-word, like we're both karaoke guys. And even though there's rap songs, that they wrote the song that way.
Yeah.
And if you like the song, yes, of course, sing the lyrics. You're not saying anything. I don't like black people because I love this rap song where they say the N-word 7 times.
But well, Elvis Costello has it in one of his songs.
Exactly.
And he but Elvis Costello also recently asked radio stations to no longer play that song.
Yeah, Bob Dylan, of course, Hurricane.
Yeah. Oh, is it in the song Hurricane, the lyrics?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I mean, it's a 7-minute song, and I've never really spent the time listening to it. So
yeah. But I mean,
usually I take a nap when people sing it at karaoke, or I walk away.
It's obviously in context where it's like, yeah, he's talking about this historical thing, so he's just using the language of the time. I listen to a history podcast, which the guy actually comments on it. He says, yeah, I know people are going to be annoyed with me, and I get shit comments, but I'm using the language from the time. I'm talking about the antebellum South, and this is what that senator said. And it's way more, I mean, I'm a history guy. I mean, that was my thing in college. It's like, yeah, I want to know what they fucking said. I want you to be like, and this guy is an N-word. It just sounds ridiculous. It's like,
yeah, but everybody knows. I mean, at least 90% of the population knows what you're referring to if you say the N-word. What word it refers to.
I know.
So it becomes like, if you continue to push it out into the culture, then are people going to use it as a license?
So are you going to blame rap musicians for doing this, who pushed it out in the culture more than anyone?
I actually do blame rap musicians for doing that. Honestly, I really do, because I personally
never listens to our podcast. I'm fucked because we've done this argument before.
See, if who does what?
My girlfriend is listening. She never listens to the podcast.
Yeah.
If she is, I'm fucked right now.
Why?
We've gotten huge arguments about this where I'm like, they wrote the lyrics, and like when I was a kid in the 70s, that was really uncool to say that word. It was dying out, at least in the North.
My dad was from Tennessee, and he was raised in Tennessee, and his mother
was an old guy.
But his mother was a blatant pro-lynching racist, right?
I know,
and I never ever heard my dad use that word.
Yeah,
ever.
And especially our generation, like that was just uncool. Even though I grew up in a very white area, there was like 2 black families. It was like if somebody said that word, even though we weren't the most enlightened people, we would have been like, dude, that's uncool. Like, it's just, no, don't say that word. That's shitty. That's because we watched Roots. We just knew the tenor of the times. It was just so uncool to do that. And then all of a sudden, rap came around, and the N-word was fucking, you heard it all the time.
Yeah.
You turn on the radio and be like, oh, that hateful word is, and I know the whole idea that like we're taking back the word. But of course, I'm sure, just like you just said, a lot of white kids heard that and said, oh, it's okay to say.
Right.
Just like if I was listening to a history podcast where they say it, I guess it's a word that I can say. But I think historically, I get it. I'm never going to say like, oh, this historian's reading something about what someone said from the antebellum South about black people. I'm not going to be like, this guy's a racist because he used the N-word. No, he's a historian. He's telling you what the person said. He's not agreeing with it. He's obviously not agreeing with it. In the case of my podcast, where they're like, look at these horrible pieces of shit. This is what they said about this black person. But he does say the word, and he does get shit for it. He gets a lot of bad comments. And he's like, guys, sorry, I'm going to fucking use the terminology of the time. It's a history podcast. This is just a little side, but I mean, there's many things like that too. Like we're in rap lyrics, that's the lyrics. And if you like the music and you want to sing it, can't. It's just a weird time in history where there's lyrics that you like a song you can't sing out loud.
I think you're right. It is a turn. It's an interesting age that we're living in, based up because of the information age, and so, and because we're really moving into a hopefully non-bullying climate for the future, where people are trying to prevent abuses from taking place. And the fact is that inflammatory language is what is behind a lot of bullying, or what bullies use as inflammatory language, designed to offend people. And anything that they can take on, they will use to either shame or hurt somebody's feelings. And even the people who say things like, "Oh, did I hurt your feelings?" to somebody, are deliberately actually trying to hurt people's feelings.
Well, there's rancor behind that. That's how we see the rancor. But like, if I sang Meredith Brooks' "Bitch" at karaoke, I'm a bitch. It's like, I'm sure there might be a woman who's like, "You can't say that. I can sing that song, but you're a man."
Right.
But it's like, I like the song, and I understand the context that she's singing it in. She's not saying all women are bitches. She's like saying, "Oh, I'm using your terminology against you. Like, sure, I'm a bitch just because I stand up for myself, whatever." So I still don't do this. I'm saying I don't. If I do like a rap song, I don't like any. I do like that Bob Dylan song "Hurricane," which has that word, and I censor it. I just don't.
You censor it, so you have the state of mind to do it because you realize you're a white guy.
But I don't think that Bob Dylan was a bad guy for writing that song. I think in this song, it's really powerful, and to let you know how people felt. It's, if he said, "Oh, he's a crazy black guy," it wouldn't be nearly as powerful, because it's obviously an anti-racist message, that song.
Yeah, I don't think they would use "crazy black guy" as an equivalent to the word. I mean, I think Dylan is creative enough that he could have found something else. I could have done it. So it's like, what's our responsibility, though, in terms of forwarding these terms of hate towards others, even in a historical context? Can there be a way to do it, even in a historical context, without actually using it? I mean, there's so many words over history that have just disappeared, that are not used anymore. So what's wrong with one more word disappearing?
Well, if you're actually like reading, accurately someone's words, that's never been an issue. Like, there's just lots of old timey words that have died out, but you just read what the person wrote. Oh, Aristotle wrote this, or I don't know.
Yeah, but we're talking in a modern context there. We're talking about now, right?
I know. It's a tricky issue.
And
even though I don't think that Bob Dylan was bad, I don't think a historian who's saying, "I'm going to read what the slave owner said."
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sitting there thinking, "I can't believe he said that word," because he's talking about history. But I don't do it. If I'm going to do an anecdote from history, I'm not going to be like, "So this guy said."
Right. So you're capable of doing that.
Yes.
I'm capable of doing it. That means anybody is capable of doing it.
They're capable. Yeah. But I don't know if it helps anything. I don't think anyone's going to be like if that historian says the actual word that sounds like ninja, I don't think anyone's going to be like, "Ooh, I can say this now."
Well, sometimes it's got to do with people who are impressionable, and they take things on as like it's okay to say. So if that guy said it, and it's not necessarily because the person is being mean, but they think it's okay. And so I feel it's kind of better to take it out entirely.
But would you say, though, I got to say, like, I've heard the argument, even the 80s when it first started, like NWA. I was like, no, we're taking back the term. But I got to be honest, I know I'm very ignorant of rap, but the little rap I know, when they do use the N-word, it's not this great thing. Like, "Oh yeah, all my N-words were great." It's usually pejorative. It's like, you low down, you're just an N-word.
Well, no, but then there's also the guys who are using it as a friendly term too.
Yes. But in rap,
hey, and no, that happens and in everyday conversation, they say it too. It's like, "Hey, you're my N-word," right? So
I don't hear that in rap as much. The rap,
I'm not even saying N-words. I'm talking about in normal conversations. I don't
know.
Which I don't think that's a good idea either. And I think what happens is, I think it was well meant to want to take back the word, but I think it was just done badly. I think
But
they
you know
just
what
should
I
have
find
just let it
fascinating?
die out. What?
How come gay people did the queer thing that totally worked? Now it's everyone can say queer. It's like if you're just this old white guy, cisgendered heterosexual male, it's just like it's totally you're supposed to say like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you can say queer, but you
queer.
can't use the F word.
Well, you can use the F word, just not.
Because they gave a different definition to the word queer. Because it
Oh,
wasn't.
F word. I'm sorry. I thought you meant fuck. Sorry.
No, not that word, because we say that one all the
the
time.
bundle of sticks words. I understand.
Yes, the bundle of sticks word.
Yes.
The cigarette word.
I
That's
know,
the
yeah.
one we're talking
So,
about.
but queer was a total pejorative when we were kids. If you called a kid a queer, that was just like just as bad as using the F word. It's like, what are you, a queer?
Yeah,
You're
but I think
queer?
one is used in a more pejorative sense. Right.
When we were kids, though, was one different? I didn't sense the difference. It seemed
I
like
think
queer.
I mean, we're in our 50s, so that's changed, Greg.
I know it has changed. It has.
Yeah. So what I'm saying though is that one of them died out more, and the other one became stronger as a pejorative.
Wait, let me reiterate: the gays actually did properly take that evil word and make it their own. They were like, "Yeah."
I don't think it was the gays. I think what happened is queer became more of like an umbrella term for different predilections.
Yeah.
Right.
But
so it wasn't necessarily just people who were gay. It became
positive though. But I mean, even before it was LGBTQ, all that stuff, I remember like just gay men being like, yeah, queer. Yeah, call us queer. And they didn't mind if anyone else did. But I think there's this weird thing where because
I think that's the difference is they didn't mind if anybody else did.
That's what I needed. So
because I think Black people, African Americans, mind if people who are not part of that culture.
No, yeah, they definitely. Definitely.
I'm underplaying it a little bit. Yes, of course. So I think that's the difference, Greg, is that one group decided they weren't going to be offended by it.
But
right?
That's what I mean.
And that's really what it comes down to is, and I think if Brendan were here, he would probably be totally on the side of this particular argument, which is, you choose what you're offended by. You choose how to be offended by something. And I think getting back to what our client is with the Joe Rogan is he didn't think at all about who he was offending or what they would be offended by. He was doing it based upon how he was raised and who he was trying to make laugh. And so he used racist terminology for humor purposes, which in my opinion is wrong to do that. It's wrong to use the pain and suffering of a group of people for your humor. That being said, I have done jokes shortly after 9/11 about people who died in 9/11. I've done jokes regarding the Holocaust and Jews. I mean, I was raised Jewish, so
I still say the R word sometimes.
You do, as
funnier.
And you guys said it last week, and I actually caught myself saying it with you, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like they've infected me, these sons of bitches.
I do gotta say though, I was listening to last week's episode, and I think like saying like fucking retarded in that Boston accent, it's almost like doing the soft N word, the AH.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because we are not people with Down syndrome.
No, I know, but I'm saying
so we don't really have that right.
I'll try not to say it again.
Although you are closer to it than I am.
Oh, definitely. But I'm saying the fucking R word when you do the Boston accent, it's almost like the soft one where it's like, no, I'm obviously talking to my friend and like, you're being a moron right now. I'm not even referring to like their mental state, their mental condition. I'm not like attacking people with developmentally challenged people. Yeah. I'm just saying it's become a term when your friends are being an idiot. And that Boston way of saying it. It seems softer. You're like, hey, you fucking retarded.
All right, so getting back to our client though. Getting back to the client. So is Joe Rogan a racist or just a big dummy?
Okay, I want to say this.
Or is there another option?
I kept getting sidetracked, but I did want to say the thing about I hate to be like the super devil's advocate here, but I do
super devil.
I do seem to remember when Black became a bad term and it was African American for a long time. That was a very logical argument. It's like we're not Black. Not many people are Black.
Well, I think they just didn't want to be referred to by color.
Okay, It could have
which
been
is
it, but
legitimate.
also it was also just like nonsensical. It's like, it was like, yeah, we're African American. Some Africans are lighter skinned. Egyptians are pretty palish compared to most
I
black
think
people.
where African American, the term African American became less inclusive is because there's lots of people in the United States who are not American and they happen to be black. And so it would be like referring to somebody and say you're an African American. They're like, no, I'm not American.
I'm
I'm not
African.
African either. I'm Jamaican.
I grew up in Moscow.
Right. I'm from
Or
South
African-
America or whatever.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, like in Europe, they don't understand the whole issues we have. They don't call people black in Europe. They're just called from Ethiopia or from Nigeria. They're said from like what country they
Yeah,
actually
just like I'm from.
come from.
You're French or you're Italian. It's just
Yeah.
like.
So
It's not
we have
one-
this really weird situation in the United States where it stems from that,
Well, it's terrible, but it's not really weird considering our history.
Well, I'm saying
The country
based
that held
upon
on to
looking at
slavery.
other countries,
Yeah.
that makes us weird to them.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's obvious we're the country that loves slavery. It's even more than any other country, and we.
I don't know that we love slavery, Greg.
We
But
did.
well, yeah, many countries love slavery. I mean, there's still slavery in Sudan for that
But
matter.
most countries got rid of slavery. At least the big countries were like they were way done with it before we were. That's why England sided with the. England was against it, but they just sided with the Confederacy because they hated us. Sorry, I misspoke. But they didn't like slavery. They were like in 1820. I think they got rid of slavery. It was illegal to have slaves.
Yeah, and the fact is that the United Kingdom was responsible for us having slaves to begin with.
I know. And if we didn't fight a civil war, it would have still kept happening, like that movie CSA that we've talked about.
I don't think we've talked about a movie called
We
CSA.
never had that mockumentary where it shows what would have happened.
We've
at
never
the
had
South.
that conversation, but that's irrelevant right now.
You should watch
Anyway,
it.
I don't want to.
It's
Anyway,
very pertinent to our
I don't.
discussion.
I don't need to. I don't need to watch it, and that's perhaps for another time. But anyway,
And you should watch Up, the Pixar movie.
right? Because it's about the same thing. Up is all about racism, and
Not
whether or
really.
not
It's just a
people
good
should be-
movie. You should just really watch it.
I've seen Up before, Greg. But that again, irrelevant to this
I know.
conversation.
I'm kidding.
We
I'm
have a
sorry.
client we're trying to address here for crying out
So
loud.
Joe Rogan, I wish.
So is he
I
a
wish
racist,
either
Greg?
of us-
Is he a racist, or is he just a dummy?
Well,
big
considering
old
that none of
dummy.
us have ever heard him. None of us have ever heard him, so it seems premature. But by those jokes,
Yeah.
even though I'm a fan.
Well, I mean,
of,
is he a racist, or is he just foreign racist terminology?
yeah, I think there is a difference.
Like just being stupid about it? Was he just being stupid about it? He's being what's the word? Irresponsible, right? He was being irresponsible in the use of that terminology, even though from what we can tell, he doesn't hate people who based on their race. He doesn't specifically attack people, but he has taken advantage of their race for humor.
So a lot of people would differ with you on that. They would not say that.
I'm not talking about a lot of people. I'm just talking about you.
Oh, me, I would say it's just like I just explained to you. Like, I don't hate, I've never once been like, mentally retarded.
Did you explain to me that you feel Joe Rogan is a racist?
I'm trying to explain by what you're saying, just like I said, I've never
Explain. You
hated a
mean
mentally retarded
SPLAIN.
person.
Yeah.
I've never explained. Lucy, I explained to you, Lucy. I've never once thought like, oh God, I wish mental retarded people were wiped off the face of the earth. But I say the word fucking retarded. There's no rancor. I've never been like, oh God, I hate those mentally retarded people.
Right.
But I say the word. So at least in my case, of course, people could say like, fuck you, Greg. You obviously do hate them. You use that word. There are people obviously would say that.
Well, maybe not that you don't hate them, but you don't respect them enough to not say things like that. And there are, I think there's various different gradations of offense.
Tell that to them, that if they're in the room, I'm not going to be saying that to them. I'm like, hey,
why is it that they have to be in the room to not say things like that? Why can't you just be kind?
I don't know if it's unkind to say it. Nobody's
Oh, really?
hurt.
It's a
No-
happy thing?
Well, nobody's hurt by it. Not one person.
Well, but you're forwarding the concept to someone else, whoever you're talking to, and
Well,
you're
it
showing that it's
happens.
okay for you to do it to them, so
You're
then
right.
they can go use it somewhere else to be
But
okay
hopefully
doing
not
it.
to a mentally retarded person. A handicapped.
Hopefully not, but you know how responsible you're going to be.
I'm
If
not
you don't
gonna,
say it at all, then there's no opportunity for that happening.
Yeah, there is. They're gonna know the word. It's not like
Maybe
I'm
from someone
educating
else, but not from you. You can be personally responsible for it.
them. Do you really think this person would be like, I never heard that term?
Doesn't
Retard?
matter. That's whataboutism, Greg.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
also-
exactly. It is.
It's also 100%.
It's called
what it
you
is.
denying your own responsibility and forwarding the negative language.
Matt, all my actions could cause someone to be like, hey, Greg just jaywalked. I'm gonna jaywalk.
Sure.
And
Absolutely. You're correct.
I'm still gonna jaywalk. It's
Well,
I'm a
there you go.
jaywalker.
That's what I said. It depends upon your own definition
I'm
of
not a
personal
role model.
responsibility.
I'm not a role model, man. If somebody sees me jaywalking, they say, hey, I'm gonna do that all the time.
They might. It's very possible.
That's
So
their
you,
problem. That
it
is
is.
not my
It's
problem.
their problem, but
It's
it's
not my
also
problem.
your problem if
No,
you
it's
make
not.
it your problem.
It's not my problem, and it shouldn't
Okay.
be by any ethical moral equation.
No, that's not true. Not by any ethical.
Yes.
Somebody's ethical equation would make it wrong.
They have bad ethical equations.
In
man.
your opinion.
No,
No, yes, in your opinion. It's
By
absolutely
science.
because you just said it's your by
by
science.
scientifically proven it. They
So
did this
all of
study
your
with
decisions
rats.
are based upon science, is what you're
They
saying.
did this. They did an experiment with rats, lab rats, where they made some jaywalk, and the other ones watched. I don't know, man, but I can't. I didn't start the fire. I can't be responsible for every fucking thing I do.
You
It's
can't be
slightly-
responsible for everything
No,
you
I
do.
can.
Yes, you
So I'm
can, because it's you. Only
So
you can be responsible for
So I'm
everything
gonna
you
hate
do.
myself for jaywalking very sensibly.
You
I
have
look
so
both
many
ways.
reasons why you hate yourself already. Why not add one more?
Because I don't hate myself for that. Because I'm gonna jaywalk. Sometimes you gotta jaywalk. It's like I'm not gonna walk 3 blocks out of my way to go to that light, and I'm smart about it. If
Well,
somebody
I mean, I
was
never
like-
would have picked jaywalking as the thing to hang my ethical hat on. You picked that one because apparently you feel
Me?
it's a wrong thing to do. So if
According
you're
to
the one who
you-
if you're the one who feels it's a wrong thing to do, then
It's
you're the one
not.
who's responsible. But then why did you bring that up as an example?
No, it's not if you do it intelligently, but if somebody sees me as a role model and says, hey, jaywalking's great, I'm gonna do it all
I
the
don't
time.
know that they would see you as
And
a
they're
role model
morons.
because they wouldn't necessarily know who you are. But if somebody was across
Exactly.
the street and they saw you do it, they'd go, "Oh, well, maybe that's okay to do."
And if they're dumb about it, they might get hit by a car, but I'm not gonna cry a tear
Well,
like,
yeah,
oh,
if they're dumb about it,
fuck,
so
if
then
only I
what you're
didn't
doing,
jaywalk.
what you're doing is then you're just now shaming that person for following your example.
No, doing it dumbly, yeah.
Well, they
It's
don't know
smart
that they're doing
jaywalk.
it dumbly. All they did was see the
Well,
way that you did it. So then that makes
sorry.
you partially responsible for it.
No, it doesn't.
It's you unwilling to take the responsibility for your actions that then causes those consequences.
Many times you have disparaged me, not using hate terms, just been like, because you're an idiot drunk.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't think I've ever
Whatever.
called you an idiot drunk. I may have
Whatever,
called you an idiot and I may have called you a
variations.
drunk, but not
yeah,
together.
variations on the theme. But I'm
So,
saying we're friends and I know where it's coming, but someone could hear you and be like, oh, I'm going to just go to a bar. And anyone I didn't even know, some guy's drunk. I'm going to be like, you're an idiot drunk. That would be shitty and mean.
Yeah.
You're not to blame for that. It's not like,
well,
I
if
feel
somebody
guilty.
heard me, then I am kind of to blame for that.
So you're going to feel guilty about it. And
I never said anything about guilt.
oh, yeah, because you don't feel guilty. You have no, but I'm saying that's not guilt.
I'm
but
saying, but there is responsibility
But you
there.
have to feel
Yeah, I could be a more responsible person. I could be a nicer person. Absolutely. Why not? There's nothing really wrong with that.
No, but sometimes there's a really funny joke to be made by not saying the kindest thing. And I don't know if that's invalid. It's a bad thing.
I think it really just depends upon a person's sense of humor and what they feel is mean or not mean. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
over the years, I
Exactly.
definitely have mean streaks that run through my system.
Really? Do tell.
Good thing I have no idea what sarcasm is. Anyway, so that being the case, I used to be much worse than I currently am, and I continue to attempt to eliminate more of my meanness and my vitriol and my visceralness and my viciousness in
Yeah.
my vocabulary. I'm not saying that it's all out of me, but I keep working on it. But I'm willing to take that responsibility and say I could be better, as opposed to you who's going, no, I will
not be responsible for that. Hey, they're just a stupid idiot. They're actually following what I'm doing. I can't actually possibly think in any way whatsoever that I'd be responsible for what somebody else does. There's no way that they would use me as an example. If I'm some kind of a role model, it's their fault. Nah, I don't really go for that. I don't take that it's the other person's responsibility. I'm willing to be responsible for you, Greg. I'm willing to be responsible for them. I'm also willing to accept mistakes that I make that could result in somebody doing something like that based upon my own actions. And I'll go, shit, I screwed up. I could have done better. So I think that's our impasse. Now, I think Joe Rogan has taken steps to move in the right direction. I think he's just been a big old dummy about the whole thing. I think based upon what I've seen is that he can learn and he can change. He's willing to do it. And I think he's definitely taken steps to try and remove some of that content from life, maybe just to make him not look as bad as he's looked. But I think, I mean, I've never really followed his show because I always considered it more of like a bro culture type thing. And I'm not really into guys like that, you know, that's not really my thing. But at least he's showing some sensibility and some genuine remorsefulness. So I got to give him credit for that. Anyway, so that's my take on our client for today.
What about his anti-vaxxing type stuff too? That's another issue.
That's a different issue, and I didn't really want to get into the politics of it based upon that. And you know that, and he has actually apologized for that too. And he said, you know, he wouldn't take full responsibility. He's like, "Why you listen to me? I'm just some dummy. Why you want to listen to what?" He's like, "If you're taking ivermectin based upon my opinion," he goes, "That you shouldn't be doing that." But see, that's a not willing to be responsible for one's words type of point of view. You know?
I also hear that from what I've heard of his critics, i.e. Jen, is that his thing is like, oh, I just have people on, I ask questions. But like when you have Proud Boys on, a lot of times asking them just, oh, say your mind. I'm just asking questions.
Well, you know, one of the guys from the Proud Boys said that being on Rogan's show was the best thing he could have done for recruitment purposes.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But at the same time, you know, it's entertainment, right? So remember Jerry Springer back in the day and Phil Donahue and all those guys, they would have guys from the KKK on in full regalia, you know, to say their views. And they did it for entertainment purposes. But, you know, it's a different day and age now. It's like,
I know. I would like to think that back then we were a little smarter and people saw that it was repugnant. People were
you would like to think that, but we know that people are freaking morons.
I don't think the KKK had a big recruitment. They looked like a bunch of fucking hillbilly idiot morons. Okay, look, I'm being racist again. So, but
I mean, you're racist against KKK members?
No, hillbillies. That's
say
that word anymore. That's a pejorative.
Well, you can't say hill. I mean, I always say hillbilly for people who live in the hills, which is different than redneck because they're the ones who work in the fields. You know.
So you really do that? Like you live in a plain, but you're a fucking hillbilly who makes.
No, I wouldn't say if somebody lived on the plain, they wouldn't be a hillbilly. They'd have to live in the hills to be a hillbilly.
So if they made moonshine and had sex with their cousin, and
that's a different stereotype, Greg.
You wouldn't say hilly. That guy's a hillbilly.
No, it depends upon which part of the South they're from. You know.
Okay, but seriously, hillbillies. Just a lot of people use that to any kind of trailer park.
A lot of people do because a lot of people don't know the definitions of words. That's the problem.
Yeah, but the real definition has changed over the years. It doesn't matter if you live in a hill. That's a very inconsequential part of that term.
Fine. In your opinion, sure.
You don't, no, it's not. It's just you don't have to live in a hill to.
I'm basing this on science, Greg.
I know the lab rats. They had lab rats make moonshine, and some of them lived in the hills, and some of them lived in a valley, and they saw there was a difference.
This is going into your greatest hits. Anyway, all right. Well, we've gone way over today. I want to thank Melissa Sercia for coming on earlier, the urban fantasy author. I'm sorry she couldn't be part of this discussion. It would have been probably quite interesting.
This was pretty fantasy.
I'm sure she had enough of us by the center of the show. Anyway, thank you very much, Greg. This has been the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. I'm signing off of TikTok. You know, I always forget how to turn off TikTok. Signing off TikTok now and ending the YouTube stream as well. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And good day.
Your consultation with the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker has ended. You may pay your retainer at www.qsblaw.org. Please exit to the right of the water cooler and grab a candy from the front desk. We hope to see you again soon, but you need to leave now. I said leave. Why don't they ever listen? Get out! Get out!